Good afternoon. It's Michael Miller here with Miami's Community News, and our guest today is Harold Ford from the South Dade NAACP. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael.
So let's talk about the NAACP first, and then we're going to get on to your background. What's its purpose and its function?
Well, the purpose of the NAACP is to basically help fight injustices for all people. Although the words say National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, basically what we're looking at is how can we help turn away those ills that our society is faced with. But more importantly, our mission is to fight against injustice and social issues.
So, Harold, lots of times people are not aware that they're not treating people equally, and then there's some that understand that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure which is the bigger problem, but one of the things that we recognize is that we have to be able to have a conversation about injustice and have to have a conversation about how we relate to people that look differently than we do, right? And that live in our community of the globe, in particular, in this case, in South Florida. So tell us how you became involved with the NAACP.
Well, back in 2001, I became a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, in which, as a part of that organization, we automatically become members of the NAACP. We pay our annual membership fees, and as you know, during that time, you're learning about the organization. You're out in the community doing various things as far as outreach, as far as because the NAACP's reach is so vast. You know, we're doing things with economic and climate justice. We deal with health disparities. We deal with not just dealing with the criminal issues or the discriminatory issues, but we deal with a wide range of issues. And so looking at all of these different areas is why, one, I got involved, and then two, learning of the organization, I just thought they just went to court to fight against these unjust laws that were passed or these issues that, our society face, i.e. like police brutality and other things. But when I got in, that's when I learned it was much broader than I could even imagine.
So most of us are unaware of those other things. But how is it, though, you had another career before this? So tell us about this.
Okay. I mean, initially, I'm a career educator. I love education, and I actually used to teach at J.R. Lee Opportunity School. I tell people that's where I cut my teeth as an educator. And it was a very, very rewarding experience because I was working with the most challenged students who had been literally kicked out of their regular schools or their home schools and bused here. Right across the street from your studio.
Yes.
And as a result of that fulfillment of that opportunity, I only left there when I was actually promoted to becoming an administrator, a school administrator. So had it not been for that promotion, I'd probably still be working at J.R.A. Lee, wherever it is now in Miami-Dade County.
So you went to FIU, got your undergraduate degree there.
No, actually, I'm a Gator.
Oh, is that right?
I got my undergraduate at the University of Florida.
I knew
statistics.
that. I saw an F in there. Okay.
I know. This is a hard place for Gators to kind of roam, but I got the statistics degree at the University of Florida. Then I attended FIU. I have a master's in religious studies, a master's in business administration, and then a specialist in educational leadership from FIU.
I knew when we first met that I felt this tone inside that is encompassing, and it was spiritual in the sense of being able to capture other people to listen. So you have an event coming up at the NAACP in a couple of days. Can we put that up on the website? So tell us about the call to action.
Awesome. Well, we have what we call our Freedom Fund weekend events. And this year we're doing a town hall and where we're bringing the national president from the NAACP, Mr. Derek Johnson, to South Florida so that he can help us carry out a discussion with local leaders to address some of the, again, issues and ills that befall our community. I happen to reside, and where we're located is in an unincorporated area of Miami-Dade County. So the resources look a lot different when they finally filter down. And basically, we're trying to see what we can do to get a more immediate response, i.e. from the county mayor, from this school superintendent. Dr. Jose L. Dotris is going to be there as well. Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, as well as the chaplain for the Miami-Dade Police Department, as well as the director for the Miami-Dade Police Department, Mr. Alfredo Ramirez. Wow. And then we also have the Florida State Conference president of the NAACP, Dr. Adora Obianuize. So we're going to have a packed house of panelists trying to, again, promote and present solutions for for some of these issues, as opposed to just sitting there and complaining.
And I think that's an important thing to be able to have the conversation with people that can make a difference. On a local level, I think one of the things that people want to know is how can I look inside and figure out about me, right, and how I relate to other people. So are there sensitivity classes if somebody says, listen, I'm realizing I'm not so open in this arena, and maybe I need somebody to get into a non-judgmental place to be able to have an open conversation? Where could somebody go to learn that?
Well, I mean, we do it all the time. I do it all the time, no matter what the space. I may go into a space that may be somewhat aggressive, but my goal is to tone it down. Let's capture the moment, and then let's see how we can touch bases on some level of commonality, so that moving forward, whatever that conversation needs to be, it can be had.
There are many people that look like me that are afraid to have a conversation about race relationships because they're afraid they're going to be tainted as racists. And when I've been able to have open conversations, it made me a better person to realize that it's okay that it bubbles up. The question is, and what do you do with that so that you don't hurt somebody else, but yet become acutely aware of where you're at and how you're either attracting or pushing people away. So I would welcome the opportunity for you to have one of those type of conversations here, right, in a group where people can feel somewhat protected. My first experience in the conversation was that we were doing it live at Jackson's Soul Food. There were 3 African Americans, 1 Hispanic, and me. And then they called me the white guy. These are friends that were there.
Okay.
That's exactly what I said. I go, what? And I said, I've never been called that. Yes, you have, Michael. You just haven't heard it. And it was a real down-to-earth conversation. And I grew up in a very sensitive environment. I was afraid to, when I would work in a restaurant, if somebody wanted coffee, I didn't want to say, do you want it black? I said, did you want cream in it? Because I was unaware of inside about how sensitive I was to that and never had a chance to sort that out. And I think there are a lot of people like that. The NAACP had its beginnings. When was that?
Well, the MWP was started back in 1909, February 12, 1909. And it was actually started as a result of a deadly race riot in Springfield, Illinois in 1908. And so as a result, 60 people got together, 7 of which were black, most notably W.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells. Our first national president was Jewish. And
we knew that was coming.
Yeah,
and I'll bet there's some Unitarians in there also.
And so, but again, as I often educate people about the organization, there's a lot of misconceptions about the NAACP, i.e. being a black organization, which, remember, the term black isn't even used in the title. So colored people also referred to as Hispanics are generally referred to as colored people in the eyes of society. So it wasn't just designed for black people. It was designed to really address the injustices of all colored people. Because even at that time, although you were dealing with lynchings of black people, you still had Hispanic people as well as Native Americans that were also being mistreated in America.
When we see the walk across the bridge, forgive me, I forgot the bridge name, and you'd see the people of different color that were there. That was so inspiring. Was that 1960-ish or so?
Yes.
And you look at the different, that's what I think that we should be about.
Exactly.
Not just this segment or this segment, but that mixture. And it's certainly in Miami-Dade County, right, over the last 25 years, it's certainly shifted to where there are people of many colors and all different shades. And we're blessed to have so many cultures that are here, and for the most part seem to be in the okay range. But let's talk about some of the injustices, significant injustices that have occurred, and how the NAACP, specifically, if you can, has helped.
Well, for example, right now we're involved in litigation with the city of Coconut Grove, or the area of Coconut Grove, where the black community's votes, due to redistricting of redrawing of maps, has been basically diluted. They decided, okay, we got this one block of black voters, tongue twister, one block of black voters that we need to divide up into 3 different districts. And so it was done intentionally. And unfortunately, those commissioners that agreed to it also verbalized this during that whole process, which is their words now are being used against them in court, which served as a motivation for that particular issue.
Is Attorney David Winker involved in that?
No, we're partnered with the ACLU.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And the Legal Defense Fund.
Yep.
So, but in addition to that, we also deal with housing issues, because a lot of people don't realize, growing up here in Miami-Dade County, in the late 60s, I'll say, mid to late 60s. So I missed that baby boomer piece by a few years. But in either case, growing up, you saw signs where they would say no rentals for blacks or Cubans.
Do you remember that?
Yes. You see these signs. My father would tell me stories because he worked for a furniture company, delivering furniture all over the city of Miami and Miami Beach. Well, if he didn't have his work pass, he couldn't go on Miami Beach as a black man. And so we only had one black beach, which is Virginia Key Beach. And now, as recent news, you've had them, basically trying to change it into a settlement for homeless people. But I think, the solutions that need to happen shouldn't be at the dis-ease of the black community.
So one of the things we recognize is that the object is to try to catch it before it turns into that. Mm-hmm. Because we know, like, a disease is the same way. If you catch it early, you can take care of it. Mm-hmm. So we look at what happened on Virginia Key, which is they got all knocked out, mm-hmm. right? And because the city wanted to change it. And the redistricting, they took away the power of the people, of the neighbors, mm-hmm. by redistricting it.
Yeah, and we just recently received communications from, again, another group in Coconut Grove area where they had a furnace called Old Smokey.
Yes.
And when Old Smokey was turned off, it was after grounds had been contaminated. And so you still have people, since the 70s, this thing has been turned off from functioning. They used it as a fire station, a fire training station at one point. Firefighters were getting sick because, again, the ground is contaminated. No one went back to reverse anything. But Smokey was not permitted to be installed initially in the white part of Coconut Grove. It was pushed to the black community. And even with black people getting sick and trying to file litigation and trying to get basically some level of health care for their illness, the city has fought against it and continues to fight against it.
So let's look at, and now if you can comment about the housing crisis, that if it's not here, it's going to be here.
Oh my goodness.
It's a gigantic problem.
Yeah. And if you look at housing in basically, let's say Miami-Dade County, most of our communities, when I talk about the Grove, when I talk about, say, Perrine, down where I live, if you look at the western part of those particular areas or subdivisions, that's where the black community was. If you look at the eastern part of it, that's where the white community lived. And there was always a major artery or barrier that sat between the two. The same thing happened in Liberty City. The white community was on the east side.
But there's a whole bunch of walls there, too, and big roads.
There were walls in Liberty City. There was a major wall that separated the white community from the black community. But, now with environmental issues and the sea level rise, and you're seeing more flooding in the eastern parts, what's happening? People are now slowly, we call it climate gentrification, but slowly now trying to move into the western parts and slowly move the black people out of those areas.
So look down the road 5 years or 10 years. What is housing and the African American or people of color population look like, and where are they all going to live if that continues to happen, where really rich people that mm-hmm. don't care about insurance too much are over there? Mm-hmm. What happens during these next 5 to 10 years? Well,
I will say part of the problem was self-inflicted. When you got people throwing cash around that you've never seen before, saying, hey, I want to buy your house for, say, $250,000. You're like, my house for $250,000? And they know that it was their parents that paid yes. for the house. And either they are not keeping up with the taxes or unable to keep up with the taxes. So they end up on the verge of losing the house. And when you end up selling it for much less than what it's actually worth, you're helping facilitate some of the gentrification that's occurring. But what we have now also is a situation where, for example, there's one major developer that was building some apartments in Perrine off of 184th Street and what we call Homestead Avenue. Well,
what
you see
street
this
is that more or less?
184th Street and Homestead Avenue is
yep.
just near US 1.
Got it.
And what happened is the one homeowner in that area said they weren't going to sell. So they literally built the apartment complex around that house. Literally. So if you're not going to sell, well, this is what we're going to do. So now that home is not going to be worth what it would have been at the time that he wanted to sell it. But that particular homeowner is also looking at the fact that even if you gave me $300,000, $400,000 for it, where am I going to live? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to move? So part of it, when I say self-inflicted, is we don't know how to move. See, if you are coming at me for my property as a developer, I'm going to say, okay, well, how many units you building? Okay, you're building, say, 50 units. Okay, I'll sell you this, plus I need 2 units. Free rent or free whatever. And that's it. So now I have a place to stay. It's going to be there in perpetuity for as long as this structure is here. And that I don't have to worry about that other piece. But what happens is we don't have the mindset of what do we do in these situations.
So you bring up a good point. As we're going through life, if we don't have mentors, if we don't have trainers or proponents for you, advocates, you have to sort of go learn as you go along, and there's lots of pitfalls, with that. The county's center, garbage center out in Doral burnt, and it's non-functional right now. Of course, the people in Doral are really happy that it's not there anymore. Supposedly, the county's looking for another place to move that. I don't know how many acres it takes and how many years it takes once if they find a spot, but I don't know which direction they're going in, right? But you might want to keep your eye on that.
Oh, we're looking.
All right,
Watching.
like not in my backyard.
Exactly.
And again, the people in Doral were they weren't praying for anybody to be hurt, right? But it did catch on fire, right? And it's out of function. So let's talk about in Coconut Grove, because what is it that causes people there to be so concerned about preserving its Bahamian history in the Coconut Grove Playhouse and the gentrification that's occurring? What is it inside people that drive them to speak loudly about that?
Well, I do know, and I'm not from Coconut Grove, but in my communications with many of them that live there, the fact that was one of the first areas where Bahamians and Black people began to set up residences. They were able to, so it's part of their history. It's part of their cultural, I guess you could say, hub for that community. And now to see some of the things that are going on, some of the developments that are coming in, and how these big dollars are just really pushing people away. And as a result, the people want to try to hold on to it, those that appreciate that history and that culture. And even knowing that, it was Bahamians that signed on a dotted line for the incorporation of the city of Miami.
There was a lady not too many years ago, maybe 2 or 3, somebody went and faked her signature on a title, and a developer bought it. Fortunately, an attorney by the name of David Winker got it back for her. It was just fraudulent, and the lady didn't know what to do. And fortunately, somebody came to help her. But I suspect that there are a lot of people that didn't even know how to ask for help.
Right.
So if somebody needs help in this regard, that they feel that not just that an injustice is wrong, but they need help in navigating out of their space that they're in, what do you suggest they do?
Well, if you reach out to the NAACP and you go to our website, we do have a legal redress committee where one of our lead attorney, she will look into the matter, and we will make the necessary moves or direct those people accordingly. They're well versed in the law, so they can tell you exactly, hey, listen, these are the steps that need to happen so that we could right this wrong or reverse it.
So when I was growing up, we had a friend, Howard Dixon, my father's mother did, Howard Dixon with the ACLU. And so I was always around that. I would always hear this little stuff, and it was very neat to see people standing up for this bigger picture stuff, right? And is it about money? It's a bigger issue about life and about what stuff is fair. But let's talk about the young person that's out there that really wants to explore the injustices that have occurred in the last, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Where can they go to perhaps get inspired about helping?
Oh, wow. There are a lot of books that they can go out and read to become more informed or better informed on those issues. One is The Color of Law. It goes back to a number of things where the law was used to justify, i.e. gentrification, to destroy black communities, especially when we were doing the highways all across America. Because
We have one down here, up yonder.
I-95 was
Yes.
one of those that went through Overtown and displaced about 80% of the residents at the time. You know, it had, at that time, Overtown had about 40,000 residents. And when the I-95 came through, it dwindled down to about 8,000.
This is sort of what happened to the city of Miami when they divided up that voting block, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Those voters that were there, not necessarily blocked, but they could. And all of a sudden, it's divided into three.
And so, but again, when they were doing that, it wasn't just in Miami. It happened in Tulsa, where we learned about Black Wall Street.
Yes.
But even after Black Wall Street, they used that to further divide Tulsa, you know, in the black community. So a lot of the highways that you see were actually driven through the black communities to facilitate the white, I guess you could say the white employee to get from their job in the city out to the suburbs. Because that was really the design for the highways, is really to help people get from city to suburb when they were doing that quote unquote expansion.
So often when somebody tries to describe a black neighborhood, they say a bad area, bad area,
Well,
right?
redlining.
Right?
That's part of redlining.
Yes. And so a lot of people don't know that mortgage companies and banks did that. That's frequent. The younger people are acutely unaware that there's been this systematic approach of separation. You stay there, all right? We're going to make sure it's going to be tough for you to be able to advance. We had an occasion about a year ago. I was here with a young lady, and happened to be African American. She says, "You know, Michael, my experience walking into a store is different than yours." And she started crying, and I was trying to do my best to continue on, but you're not 60 yet, but soon enough. And I'm sure you've been through all sorts of stuff. What is it like when you know that you're being looked at and watched because of the color of your skin?
Well, for me personally, I laugh at it. Because, I mean, when you're in a position where you can go in and buy whatever you want, but now I can say, okay, well, listen, I see I'm being watched, I'm being followed. And it even happened to me right here in the JCPenney in the Cutler Ridge Mall at one point. You know, and I actually caught the gentleman that was following me or tailing me around the store because he was trying to be very stealthily. And so when I caught him, I said, do me a favor, call your manager. I said, you know, and when the manager came, the manager recognized me because she was one of my church members. I said, now it's embarrassing that I'm walking through the store looking for a gift from my mom because her birthday was coming up. And I'm going from this section to this section. I'm not carrying anything from one section to the other. I will pick something off the rack, look at it, put it down, go over to another section, look at something else, come back over here. I did it about 3 or 4 times. And I noticed this person I kept seeing this person no matter where I went, following me. So finally what I did was I walked to a certain area. When I perceived him behind me, I just turned around immediately. And then he tried to duck behind a corner, and that's when I approached him and said, go get your manager. And I explained to the manager, listen, and she already knew me, but I explained to her that profiling needs to stop. I said, the very people that you're watching have no concern about taking anything from you, but it's the people that you're not giving any attention to that are robbing you blind. So you've got to be careful.
When I was a teenager, I used to deliver newspapers. My father's car. I delivered newspapers a couple nights a week for years. I never was pulled over, ever, ever. One day I led a Puerto Rican friend of mine who had back then an afro, who was dark. First night he gets pulled over. I go, how is that possible? That was it just a different policeman, or was it the way he looked? And my conclusion was, with all the times that hundreds of times I was doing it, never get pulled over. I know why, because I looked the way that I look, and that the other guy looked the way that he did. And so we profile this stuff so often in our head. If somebody looks a certain way, that it means something. An interesting experience. About 3 months ago, some kids dropped off a white Charger out in front. I somebody comes running from across the street. A lady, these kids just dumped that car there. And so 5 kids get out, and I'm thinking, oh, a bunch of black kids, they stole this white car. They stole this from a white guy. That's what I'm thinking. And I'm going, oh, okay. I call the police. By the way, some kids just left his car in our parking lot. So which way are they going? He says, they're going south. 10 minutes later, the policeman is helping him put gas into the car. So I said to the policeman, what is that like every day? I had a thought. He said, Michael, every day we have to put aside that stuff and look past that the way that they're looking, because you just don't know. I was one of those introspective moments where I said, okay, so inside brewing, I'm thinking if a kid looks a certain way, therefore part of my brain is saying it must be whatever it is. I think there's a lot of us, that are there. And I think one of the things we need to do is forgive ourselves for thinking it and start from the beginning and say, what can you do about that? So the next time it comes, you can say, stop that, allow for some other possibilities. And it was really good training for me in that moment. And so here it is now, months later, and I'm reliving it.
Wow.
Yes. And so I think a lot of us, if we can just be honest about it, it'll just make it better. We become better when we can be honest. And again, so let's talk about on April 29th, you have a big event, this gigantic event, right?
So April 28th is our town hall.
I knew it was 28th.
Right, the town hall.
My eyesight.
But we also have the event that we're doing at Topgolf Corral
Okay.
on the 29th.
Okay.
But basically, like I said, the town hall, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, some of the panelists that are going to be here and be a part of that. But in addition to that, I want to invite the community to come out and let your voices be heard. If you have certain questions, we're going to allow an opportunity for Q&A toward the end of the panel discussion so that we can, again, drill down into what solutions are going to address the myriad of problems that we face within our communities.
I do want to compliment CHI during the pandemic. They had the buses that went out and went to the people. That was really significant under their leadership, and the colonel and the team did a wonderful job. And when I saw they were doing that, I was so thrilled because other people, were able to go get whatever. It was really, you saw how it worked.
Right.
The rich got it first, and then the poor people, or the people that are poor, they were one, afraid, two, didn't have the public transportation, three, they didn't have the support, four, they didn't have enough education about it, what to do. So when CHI went out there and went to where the challenges were and be able to comfort those people and say, you matter and we care about you, it was really significant, I think, for all of us, the people that know that. So here we are. You're in your 4 years now, NAACP, right? My congratulations from moving from teaching young children that needed leadership and mentors, all right?
Amen.
And you were able to say, okay, I want to try something different and be able to make a difference, and you have, and we want to be part of that.
Well, we definitely welcome it.
Okay.
And I tell people, I'm not looking for just members and membership.
Yeah.
I need your motor skills. I need you hands-on. I need you, out there in the fight. I tell people, no matter what your situation is. And even when I encounter people about voting, well, some people may say, well, I got a record, I can't vote. I said, but guess what? Do you know 10 or 20 people that can vote?
Yes.
Make sure they go vote. That way, again, you're still a part of the game, you're still a part of the team, and you're making a difference. So we create opportunities for everyone to get involved for the betterment of their community.
Okay.
And that's what our goal is.
Harold Ford from the NAACP, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Alex, thank you for the show, folks. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for joining us. Have a good